Hi, my name is David Torres. In this short video, I will be introducing a tiny tool that helps to manage and audit permissions of users and roles in AWS. Who am I after all? I am a Linux system specialist, and I am also one independent cybersecurity researcher. Currently, I work as a full-time DevOps engineer with focus on rebuilding, redesigning, and securing legacy infrastructure. I also work as a consultant and incident responder. Over the past year or so, I contributed to many open source projects, mostly related to Linux, systems, or cybersecurity. I also coordinated the dismantle of a malware infrastructure after one incident response job. And often, I create tutorials, cheat sheets, and walkthroughs related to Linux and hacking. Here we have two examples of policies. Policies can be attached to user accounts or service accounts or roles that could be assumed by AWS resources such as Lambda functions or EC2 instance and so on. These IAM policies define access control rules for S3 resources. The left one has two distinct statements. The first statement allows unrestricted access to all S3 actions to all resources. Then on the second statement, it actually denies all actions for certain resources. Even though it might not be wrong, it's certainly over permissive. Because if today's environment has a certain number of resources that could be manipulated with the S3 actions, and the universe of buckets minus this stated bucket are allowed, any new bucket created in the future would be automatically falling under the allow of the first statement. This is dangerous. In the IAM policy on the right, there is only one statement, but this statement defines exactly what are the two actions allowed and what resource it refers to. Optionally, additional conditions could be applied, but this is out of the scope of this recording. As an illustration, those two IAM policies can be represented with these two methods. The one on the left is a marble sculpture. Its subtractive method means you grant much more permission than needed and you remove to get to the bare minimum. On the other hand, the clay method on the right is one additive method. You just give the permissions necessary to perform the task. The right method depends on the requirements of the application or the tasks to be performed. Knowing what permissions we need to grant is challenging. Not always there is a clear requirement list of permissions that needs to be granted for certain service account, user, or even a role. That's why we often rely on granting more permissions than needed and look into the activities and know what is really being used, what is not being used. In this example, the service account is going to look into CloudTrail for activities in the last 3 hours. Could be also one ARN for a role and works the same way. The tool will actually count the occurrences of events and sort them by granted or denied. If there is one application having issues and the logs are not very descriptive or meaningful, this would reveal what's the permission it's trying to use and probably that's causing the breakage. Or if someone or get a hold of credentials that might have leaked for any reason, and we can see that it's trying to be used to access additional resources. And finally, it can be used to know and grant exactly the permissions that are needed. This is the repository of the application I mentioned. There is only one Python script, which is the application itself, and a README with a few illustrations. The requirements, the dependencies are Boto3 for connecting to AWS resources, APIs, RE for regex to parse ARN, and tabulate will actually pre-print things. The format is Python, the name of the script, and then what you want to look at, if it's a username or the ARN of a row, the number of hours. As you can see, app name 3 hours or row 24 hours. This is how the output looks like. If there's no activity for that period, then if there is, and also if you want to have more information about any of these granted or denied permissions, you can just copy, paste, and hit enter, and it will show the activities in the ARN. So you know what are the buckets, what are the DynamoDB tables, what are the SNS, and so on. Leaving it empty, hitting enter, it simply stops and exits the application. It starts by importing the dependencies and getting the arguments in place to understand if it's a username or a row ARN by the presence of the syntax of the ARN, and then classifies it's a username or not. Then it places those parameters for the CloudTrail query, depend on that flag. If it's a username, gives the username. Other than that, is the ARN for the row. It makes the transformations for UTC time, for the window of time desired, as many hours, and loops through all of them because it has max of 50 results per page. So it gets tokens to know that there is another page. It depends on how many events are there. If the window is larger, more events probably. And then it loops through all of the pages, gathering all the information necessary. Then it creates lists for the errors, the denials, and the granted permissions, and the logs themselves. This is how it is classified by the presence of one error code, and then it shows the event name. Then it prints the counters and show the list of counters if they are greater than 0. First is the denied list and then the granted list. It allows you to loop through the logs by entering the permission you want to look up, or even any other thing. If you just put get, it will get all the permissions or all of them that has get in the middle of the string, or list, and you get all of them, or S3, who knows. Then what it does is, because the JSON is very polluted with tons of key value pairs that are irrelevant, what it's looking at is for all the occurrences of ARNs, which will give exactly what we need, the resource ARN that we need to grant the permission we are looking for. And it loops through. If you want, you can even enable additional visualization for those JSONs for each event, which is not really the most important thing. The ARNs are the most important things. So this is also a skeleton script that can be used to parse CloudTrails events of any nature. It's just a draft. It's just for the sake of making my life easier, faster, more assertive, and for the purpose of knowing, acquiring more knowledge and learning more about AWS resources. So feel free to copy, use, and contribute to the code if you wish.